Hi everyone. Today I am going to teach you how to make your own watercolor paints from home. If you have watercolor paints at home, that's great. You can use them as is. But if you do not have watercolor paints, I've found a few different ways that you can easily make your own paints at home. Option number one, find some dried out colored markers that you have at your house. The ones that, if you write on the paper, they just don't show up very good. They're starting to dry out. You're ready. You could throw them in the garbage at that point. But if you take the cap off and set it in a little bit of water, I've left this sit for probably an hour in here. You wouldn't have to leave it in there that long, maybe just 20 minutes. But the water is going to turn whatever color that you've had sitting in there. So if you have a blue marker, you're going to get blue watercolor paint. And here is what it looks like when you put it on the paper. Dip your brush in your watercolor paint. Put it on your paper. Beautiful. You could do this with any color marker that you have. All right, option number two for making watercolor paints at home. All you need is any colored markers you have at home, ones that work well, that have a lot of ink left in them. And here is what you're going to do. Choose whichever colored marker that you want to make into paint. Here I got a nice purple. And then you're going to need a piece of plastic. I found that using a Ziploc bag works great. So just set your Ziploc bag down next to your piece of paper. And then all you do is color with your marker on top of the Ziploc bag. Get a cup of clean water. Make sure it is a cup that your family or an adult in your house, they don't care if you use it for paint. Probably don't use one that you drink out of every day. Okay, so some clean water, and grab a paintbrush. Dip the paintbrush in the water, and then you just use the paintbrush right over top of where you put marker on the bag, and you've made a new color of watercolor paint. Ooh, and where you overlap colors, you'll get a new color that you've created. So where I've overlapped these two colors, it's kind of turning a violet color. Okay, so now a few just fun extra things you can do with watercolor paint to give it some cool texture. We've talked a lot about texture, and that's how we make a flat object look like it has, look like if you reached out and touched it, it would have a really cool feel to it. So some different kinds of texture, like a shirt would be like silky or smooth. A wall could be bumpy. All kinds of different textures, like a soccer ball has texture on it. It's got the hexagon shapes on it. But now what I'm going to do is show you how to make kind of a frosty looking texture. And all you have to use is table salt. So when your watercolor is still wet, make sure that it's wet enough on the paper. If it's just barely wet, it won't work that well. But here's what happens when you sprinkle a little table salt on the top. It's giving it a cool, frosty looking texture. And it'll become more and more noticeable as it dries, because the salt absorbs some of the paint, so it's going to leave some areas where it soaked up the paint. Another option of something you could do to create texture is using some cling wrap. You might have this in your kitchen. It's usually used to, store food. but it's an excellent idea for doing crafts and painting. So yesterday I tested this out, and I'm going to show you what the end result looked like. So I put watercolor paint all over here, different colors, and then I took a sheet of plastic wrap and I just laid it over the top. Laid it over the top while it was still wet and kind of squish it down like this and let it dry. It's going to be hard to not touch it or to see what it looks like, but the longer you wait, the cooler result is you're going to have. So if you can let it sit maybe even overnight, and then when you peel it off when it's dry, it's going to give you a really cool looking texture. All right, option number 3 is using something called isopropyl alcohol. So this is something you'd only want to use after you ask an adult in your house and they say it's okay. And you'd probably want them by you too, just to make sure you're safe with it and whatever. This is definitely not something you would ever drink or anything. So it's used for a lot of times if you have like a cut or an infection or something, you can use it to clean where you got hurt, and it helps it heal. But it does something really cool when you add it to watercolor paint. And I'm going to use a dropper. If you have a dropper at home, you could use a dropper. And it's just going to help you pick up a little of that isopropyl alcohol. And then you would drip it on to, or squeeze a drop out onto your watercolor painting. If you don't have, this was some kind of hemp oil for my dog, and it's all gone. So that's why I'm using this empty bottle. But a lot of times in the kitchen, an adult in the house might have a dropper of some sort, or like a turkey baster kind of that squeezes up gravy. You could use one of those too. Just make sure you wash it really good when you're done. So let's see what this looks like. Do it right over here so you can see it well. Make sure you have kind of a good layer of watercolor paint. That's how it will show up the best after you put your drop of isopropyl alcohol in there. Okay, so I filled my dropper up with just a little bit of the isopropyl alcohol or rubbing alcohol. And when I put a dot on here, isn't that awesome? It makes the watercolor paint, it pushes it away. So that is going to give you a really awesome effect when it's dry. Happy painting!